1 in 4 people in the UK will die from cancer. There are many reasons for this, but there is one that some people would rather you didn't know about. Electromagnetic radiation that comes from the Earth could potentially be responsible for many of the health problems facing the modern world. It is called geopathic stress, and its adverse health effects have largely been dismissed by modern science. But over the past century, we have gradually developed technologies that give off a similar radiation, a link that until now has never been established.
And it's just coming up to 9 minutes past 11 on this Thursday, the 10th of October. It's good to have your company, and our phone line is open to you on 053 45 222. And let me tell you that for the rest of the programme, we're very much concentrating now on geopathic stress, because joining us in the studio is geopathic stress diviner Brendan Murphy. Brendan, you're most welcome once again. Good to have you with us. I suppose before we get into that too much, I just want to find out what's been happening since you were last on the programme.
We have done several tests for different crowds. I've done them for three different cancer organisations now, and in all cases have showed up with 100% accuracy where the people have been sleeping, that they actually were sleeping over geopathic stress lines.
We've come to Ireland to meet Brendan Murphy, a dowser who spends his days looking for geopathic stress and telling people to move their beds. It's a simple problem with a simple cure, but as we discovered over the past 18 months, a simple cure is not always desirable. The consequences of geopathic stress becoming common knowledge are far-reaching.
I found I could locate these lines very easily, and in particular where there were serious ones, where there were serious lines of geopathic stress, you will always have or have had serious problems in that bed. Alan McGuire from South East Radio asked me would I go on radio, speak about this. I said no initially, because I didn't want to, because neighbours of mine didn't know I was doing this, and friends of mine, and you know yourself, you go around with 2 pieces of wires telling people to move beds around, it wasn't acceptable. Like, you were considered to be a little bit of a loony. I was hesitant to do it, but because I felt so strongly about it, I said right, that I would do it.
I was very cynical, and the first thing I did was I went out to record houses with him. I also found out a few houses where I brought Brendan to them where he didn't even know where we were going, didn't know the name, didn't know the location. I picked him up and brought him from his car to an address he had no idea where we were going, just so I could test him out. And his accuracy when it came to defining what the problems were in the household, all based on his knowledge of geopathic stress, was staggering.
This is the home of Larry and Mari Devereux. Larry's first wife died of breast cancer, and now Mari has been diagnosed with the same problem. We followed Brendan to their house to see if geopathic stress could provide an explanation. As we went around the outside of the house, Brendan found 2 strong lines, one of which ran straight through their bed.
I'd never ever would have dreamt for the second time round. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
It really is more than a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, they say lightning never strikes twice, but unfortunately they did here.
My first wife had that operation in 1981 with the same operation.
Same complaint,
yeah. And we slept in the same, not the same bed, but you know what I mean?
Same room.
Same position.
Same position in the room.
Yeah.
And you have diabetes.
Yeah.
Because the centre of the line is actually coming up through your stomach.
Yeah.
And up across you then, like that, Mary. And the width then takes your whole upper body, and it takes your upper body. You know, so you'd want to move it actually further than that, would.
Yes.
Brendan's work is based on the findings of Gustav Freyer von Pohl. This wealthy German baron provided the first conclusive study on geopathic stress in 1929. In the presence of the local mayor, he doused an entire German town called Wilsbiburg. and marked all the lines on a large map. Searching through the death records, von Pohl discovered that the beds of all the cancer victims were directly over geopathic stress lines. This was the first time a study clearly demonstrated a link between exposure to electromagnetic radiation and ill health. But whilst the German Central Committee for Cancer Research took this seriously, elsewhere in the scientific world, the existence of geopathic stress was largely ignored. Its origins were not widely understood. But in 1954, the first scientific explanation came from a German scientist called Schumann. He discovered that the Earth vibrates at a very low frequency, which creates waves of electromagnetic radiation that bounce between the surface of the Earth and the outer layers of the atmosphere. Schumann waves, as they are now called, are beneficial to us. All life has evolved within this natural energy field. But any changes to it can have serious implications for our health. The primary cause of this are the thousands of underground streams that flow beneath the surface of the Earth. As the water flows in underground caverns, electrons are chipped off the water molecules, creating large and often powerful electric fields that radiate out into the atmosphere, changing or distorting the Schumann waves. And yet every day we go about our lives completely unaware of its existence. We'd been impressed by Brendan's accuracy at Larry and Mari's house, and had set up another house for him to dowse. We felt that we had to test him, so neither of us knew anything about the house or the occupant. As before, Brendan began by dowsing from the outside.
There's one in here. We have one line now going in there. Okay. So there's a geopathic stress line coming this way, down across here, going over and in that way. Okay. Here we have another one. Now, second one here running parallel, coming this way, coming up across this way. Okay. I've been divining now, or dowsing as it's called in the continent, for the last 6 years. Yes, I've tested houses for a number of doctors. They all, well not all, most of them agree with what I'm doing and encourage you to continue doing it. Some of them are very convinced now because they actually have told patients to get their houses tested. Right, now there's another one. Right, that's going to run right up through the length of the house.
Right.
Right, which means that where that crosses with the other two lines are
Going to be a strong point.
It's going to create two vortexes, yeah,
Right.
where to cross.
Right.
Okay.
I have been sleeping here almost 5 years now. I mean, he was spot on and even from outside the house he had picked up on. I mean, I knew from the moment he said, the very first line he picked up on and pointed where it was going in the house. I mean, I knew I was in trouble because it was exactly crossing across my bed.
This is the width of that line. Okay, so that line comes out here.
Right, so it's a couple
Going
of foot
up.
wide.
2.5 feet wide, going straight up that way. Okay, so that's coming right up. Say if you sleep on this side of the bed, it'll be coming up through your left side and right up through.
I'm barely over a month back from the hospital. I've had a very major operation called a neck dissection, where they take out all the muscles of your neck and the glands.
Now, that's the width of that line, right? So that line comes out, the outside of that line is there, with the centre in here, in this area, and then the other part goes into the wall, okay? So the actual vortex is missing where you sleep right now, right?
Well, not by enough.
Not by enough, no.
Well,
no.
you see, I did actually sleep in against that wall.
The head of your bed was in further?
Yes, the head of my bed was in further, and because if I woke during the night, I was bashing my head off the thing. I moved it out, you see, so I'd have that little bit of. So I mean, I'm actually only about 6 months out from the wall.
Right, and when you got sick, was your bed actually in against the wall?
I'm possibly slightly safer now in the last 6 months where I was, but because the vortex is there, I mean, where that whole bed is not good. I am not a threat to anybody apart from maybe the pharmaceutical companies. Like if you don't believe there's any difference in sleeping here and sleeping over this side, it can do you no harm if you say there's nothing different in it. But like I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases where I can show from moving a bed from one side of a room to another
can have serious implications on your health.
We contacted over 50 medical research organisations to find out if they knew of any research in this area. Of the 3 replies we received, none claimed to have heard of the subject, and one scientist in particular took the opportunity to tell us what she thought of geopathic stress and dowsing. Brendan also tried contacting many research groups. He sent case studies to the Irish Cancer Society, and after several months of waiting for a response, decided to phone them directly.
I said to him, why had you not been in touch? I said that, I said, if you want to conduct any research in this area, I said, I'll willingly do any test that you want to do. I said, if you want to pick a house where somebody has cancer, don't tell me where it is, and don't tell me who has the cancer. And I said, I'll test the house free of charge. I said, I don't want my name disclosed, and I don't want any money for it. I said, I'm not looking for credit. I said, all I want you to do is to fund some research in this area. She said to me that, do you do this with 2 pieces of wires? I said, I do. And she says, that's very unscientific. She said that this has to be proved by a panel of doctors, and she says, a panel of doctors is never going to prove that.
Despite the lack of organisations willing to take this seriously, we found one exception. Brendan took us to meet Josephine Casey, founder of North Wexford Cancer Group. As one of Ireland's largest fundraisers for cancer research, Josephine has campaigned for further studies into geopathic stress, but to no avail. She first had her house tested as part of a live show for South East Radio.
I was diagnosed with cancer in June 98. I had breast cancer, grade 3. It's a serious grade. It was at an advanced stage. When Alan McGuire contacted me, I had reservations. I said he's some kind of a quack. Now I'd seen it done as a child for water, somebody diving for water, and I said, how can he possibly, how can there be a link, or how can he possibly tell? So when he did this house, okay, I was, the lines weren't strong here, but when he went to my old house and he was just 100% accurate, I was left flabbergasted. And all I regretted was why the hell I hadn't got out of that house before then. A number of people on the road, or in the general area really, in a radius of a mile of my house, 18 had died from cancer. And in one house, there was 3 sisters who died with breast cancer over a period of 2 years, and 2 brothers died all within a 5-year period with cancer. That would be less than a mile from my old house, and to me that's a frightening statistic.
We met Jimmy, the only surviving member of the family. From outside the house, Brendan identified 2 strong areas of geopathic stress. It's impossible to say whether this was the cause of the deaths, but to us it seemed more than coincidence that all 5 people who died had slept over those 2 areas. The only person whose bed was not on a line was Jimmy's. A short distance away, Josephine took us to her old road. Almost every house had someone suffering with cancer. Almost every house had strong geopathic stress lines running through them. Even more frightening is that in a nearby parish, every single house has at least one person suffering with cancer. One thing is certain, incidents of cancer on this scale cannot be explained by current medical knowledge.
I was a bit sceptical in the beginning because you hear so many things, and when you've been so ill, it's just so hard to believe that, a line under your bed can make a difference of life or death. I mean, I would be prepared to do anything to try and convince, everybody that this test is worth having done.
We went to meet Anne Hardy, a medical historian for the Wellcome Trust in University College London, who could perhaps give us an insight as to why cancer rates are so high.
I find geopathic stress a very interesting proposition. Throughout modern history, at any rate, historical epidemiologists like myself, and indeed practicing epidemiologists, have been puzzled by disease clusters. And geopathic stress would offer one explanation for why some disease clusters for certain diseases happen. The growth of cancer disease in the 20th century has many causes. In the first place, people are living longer. Life expectancy in 1900 was about between 40 and 50 years for most people. Now it's 70 and more, and cancer is a disease of aging, so that the longer people survive, the more people will develop cancer. So that is one consideration.
Cancer may well be a disease of aging, but that doesn't explain how childhood leukemia has become the biggest killer of children in the Western world. If geopathic stress is an explanation for this, then it's exposure to electromagnetic radiation that is causing the damage.
From a variety of nations gathered under one roof to a place where sensible people, irrespective of their nationality, spend approximately 1/3 of their lives in supine bliss.
After watching Brendan, we were convinced that certain illnesses have more to do with where you sleep. So we went to the largest sleep laboratory in the world at the University of Surrey to find out a little more about what happens to our bodies during the night.
Today what we're doing today is a technique called polysomnography, whereby we're measuring the electrical activity of the brain and associated muscles and such, and also the eyes, to give us an idea of what's occurring during this patient's sleep. The immune system, like every other system in the body, does require a period of recovery or rest, for want of a better term. And during the sleep phases, we know that the whole body as an organism would recover and would rest during that period. Because what we do know is if you're sleep deprived, or if your sleep patterns change significantly, what can happen to your immune system is that it will change and it will not be as functional as normally as you would like it to be, and thus you are more susceptible to things such as coughs and colds. The problem is with sleep is that we know it's important, so we know that you must sleep. How much sleep you need is an individual thing.
A lot of people have a different idea of how geopathic stress would affect the immune system. Geopathic stress is tied in a lot with sleep, because that's the time you're going to be in the stationary phase for maybe 8 hours, and you could be affected by this.
Killian is a biochemist, and for the past 4 years he has worked closely with Brendan to try and establish a scientific basis for the effects of geopathic stress.
What geopathic stress does, it is an area of amplified radiation, electromagnetic. It can impair immune function. Cells are forced induction, they can't operate, they can't scavenge as well for bacteria, virus, etc. It also can play roles in sleep patterns. It can upset brainwave function, and brain waves and hormone release are key factors in regulating and maintaining a proper immune system.
We've found that when you sleep in those areas where there is a strong geomagnetic anomaly, then you're much more likely to suffer ill health. What happens at night is that the electromagnetic environment is quietened enormously. For a start, the sun has gone down, and that's a big source of electromagnetic radiation, so that's out of the way. When you go to sleep, your muscles quieten down, and all the electrical activity of the muscles therefore ceases. So you've got at night and when you're asleep what are called optimal signal-to-noise conditions. And at those moments, the brain then starts up, increases its amplitude enormously, and starts powering out rhythmic signals.
Every day we lose about 500 million cells, and in order to stay healthy, our bodies must replace them. This happens at night when electric signals from the brain are sent to the cells, telling them whether to divide or not, a process called mitosis.
If the brain can't send the signals to the cells because of some other noise, may not be the sun, that may not be there, but other things creating noise, like geopathic stress and anomalies, creating electric fields, they are like noise to the brain, then the brain has to either up the amplitude to make the signal clearer, or the cells don't hear it. And if the cells don't hear it often enough, they don't perform, they don't replace themselves or split into two, they just stay the way they are. And that means we're not healthy. Now you can see that over time, with chronic exposure, a situation can arise where the body is no longer a complete body anymore. And that is another description for ill health.
Roger Coghill has run an independent laboratory for over 20 years, specialising in the effects of electricity and magnetism on organic life. Being independent allows them a freedom of speech that most scientists don't have, due to the fact their jobs often rely on government or industry funding.
You know, biologists trying to catch up. The first time we really understood that the brain issued waves was only in 1929. It's about the same year that von Pohl was carrying out his experiments in Bavaria. We still don't know a lot about brain rhythms. We only found out the importance of those rhythms for cellular activity in about 1998. Parts of the brain, a specific part of the brain in human beings, is very sensitive to electromagnetic energy, such as geomagnetic energy. And it's called the pineal gland. Now this is a tiny little pine cone shaped organ in the brain which is responsible for the secretion of one specific hormone. It actually makes more than one, but we don't know much about the others. But it certainly makes a hormone called melatonin.
These hormones are used widely for cellular repair, immune function repair. But melatonin is a particularly important one, as there's been a lot of research, clinical research done to show it has a very, very strong anti-tumour promoting agent.
Now there's a lot of argument about melatonin, but let me tell you what the real situation is. Melatonin is a cancer-stopping agent. It's what's called an oncostatic agent. It's also a very, very powerful antioxidant. But the thing about it is that the pineal gland only makes it when the conditions for sending signals between the brain and the body are optimized. It won't make it unless they are. So when the sun's in the sky and it's bright light everywhere, the pineal won't make melatonin. It's very interesting. It's a clue to us. It only makes it when it's dark at night, when you see a tenfold rise in the secretion levels of melatonin from the pineal gland.
The lack of melatonin in our bodies could have a devastating effect on us. But there are also other ways in which exposure to electromagnetic fields such as geopathic stress could cause ill health.
Some of our cells need energy for different things. For example, our immune system needs energy to detect pathogenic materials inside the body, infectious invaders like bacteria and viruses. And if those white blood cells which do that job can't develop the energy they need, then they can't do their job properly, and therefore they can't defend us against things like cancer. So you can see there is a direct connection now between applying a chronic moving magnetic field, such as you would find in geomagnetic areas of stress, and the body's ability to defend itself against infection and disease. Now what we see here are the stained cells which are dead, like this one is a dead lymphocyte, and the live cells which are white. There's a white one there. And if we look around the slide a bit, we see here's another white one. Now watch this white cell carefully. At the moment it's alive and well. Now we apply an electric field to it, and watch what happens. What is going to happen is that the cell, which is currently intact, will burst, as it now is, spilling out its interior. The interior is being stained blue by the dye, and the dye has also now penetrated the interior of the cell, so this one is as dead as this one. And what we're showing here on screen is the effect of an electric field in damaging the white blood cells of our immune system. With a damaged immune system, we are open to infection, to cancer, and to all kinds of ill health.
My first exposure to this whole area was I was at a house one night with Brendan Murphy, and he started discussing geopathic stress, and the explanation sounded very plausible, and he then proceeded to produce 2 copper rods and walk around the room with swinging rods. So I laughed. I thought it was a load of crap, really. I really did laugh. I laughed my ass off at it, really. But yeah, but as he explained it further, as he supplied literature, as he developed a skill for it, he started dealing with people that were affected by it, and he started compiling his statistics and his research. He couldn't really ignore it.
I don't think the ability to divine or douse is a gift. Every single person that I know of on this earth has that ability. Like, if animals in a field can instinctively know where they are, we are basically animals. We're just of a higher intellect. But what would be a gift, or what I would consider to be a gift, is to be good at it.
People are all too quick to dismiss it as a hoax or a money-making scheme or etc. But if you had a device you could put two AA batteries in and it would make a nice little beep and tell you you've got geopathic stress, it would be perfectly acceptable.
I probably knew a bit about it before I knew it was called GS. Really, I do a lot of work with ground investigation, and some of the drillers, the older drillers, actually use divining rods to find buried pipe work or flowing water that we're trying to avoid when we're drilling. And certainly they would see it as an old skill that's been passed down through generations rather than a new age thing that we're all finding out about. And I hadn't questioned the validity of it during that work, because they went and found the pipes and they were where the rods said that they would be.
A lot of people I have discussed it with would be in the scientific community as such. I find a lot of people in the scientific community would automatically dismiss straight away. They are quite comfortable with the explanation of geopathic stress, the scientific, the EMF and so forth, so on. But it's the method of detection people have a problem with. A guy swinging two copper rods around is generally not acceptable to anyone who deems himself as a scientist or a boffin.
Well, what we have now is an ordinary electrical cable such as you might use for a cable extension in your house. And you can see that as I bring the cable towards the screen of the probe, the value goes up substantially. And when I take it away again, it drops. So that is an electric field. But now watch what happens when I bring a magnet into the same value. Now it's starting at 150, but as I bring the magnet down there, it's pushed the field strength right down to 50. You see how the magnetic field affects the electric field, and so it is with our bodies. When we have an electric field coming from our bodies and we walk over a piece of ground where the magnetic field has changed, then that magnetic field changes the electric field in our bodies.
Like, if this instinct is inside every one of us, well, then we need very little. Like, the wire is not going to be the instrument to measure it. It's your body, and it's your body's reaction to these energy fields. It's that makes the rods move.
Now meet Catherine Brent of Devon in Cornwall, whose physical reaction to water is so strong that she is literally pulled this way and that in the direction of the underground stream she locates for Cornish farmers. Since she discovered her gift 3 years ago, Catherine has located 300 deep boreholes and has been right 98 times in every 100.
It has to be said that I did meet with some opposition, not only from listeners who felt it was a scam and how dare I promote such a thing, but even people within the South East Radio organisation were quite sceptical. People who naturally felt that I was being sucked into this.
There are some people who don't believe in diviners. They say that you can get water anywhere. And I know for a fact that that's not true. You can't get water anywhere, because I've been brought to several places that they can't get water, or that they couldn't. In Barbara's case there in particular, it was an interesting one, like, because I had